I want to explain where the scholarship is at. So scholars have been divided over how to understand John Cassian's allegedly competing claims about divine grace. Scholars, historical theologians, want to create a model. We want to do a systematic theology on John Cassian's doctrine of grace. Now, Cassian was not a systematic theologian. I would argue he was a theologian. His writings are for monks. They are ascetic writings. So we need to do our best to understand the practical theology and to sort of work backwards. Cassian sometimes, in previous scholarship, is dismissed as a monk writing for monks. But that line, I argued in my dissertation, doesn't work because Augustine was also a monk, and he wrote letters to monks, for monks. Guess what? On the predestination of the saints, that's written to a layman who is wondering about these monks. The gift of perseverance, that is written to monks. And so you can't just dismiss Cassian's writings and then accept Augustine's writings at the same time. That's inconsistent. These models of grace, so scholars have been divided over how to understand that. And Fairbairn goes to survey that literature. He's giving this survey. He's giving these different views. He's engaging with the scholarship, which is great. And you see here these different models, cooperative model. Then in the middle of the paragraph, roughly, here it is. Still more recently, Juris, writing in 2020, explicitly rejects the contention that Huang's two models are mutually exclusive. So sometimes scholars have pitted that there are like two models there, or like even that Cassian was inconsistent, or he changed his mind, or so on and so forth. So still more recently, Juris, writing in 2020, explicitly rejects the contention that Huang's two models are mutually exclusive and argues instead that Cassian is following his teacher, Chrysostom, in holding to a concurrence model in which there is no tension between grace and human action, and asserts that a concurrence model would alleviate any tension that exists for the problem passages found in Conference 13, Conlatio 13, and elsewhere. So Fairbairn says this understanding does not assign grace-focused and human action-focused passages to different periods in the Christian salvation, as do Stewart's and Agliari's proposals, as well as Huang's first model, nor does it assign such diverse passages to different people, but instead applies them both to the concurrent working of grace and human action at the same time. So this he views as a strength. Why is this important? When we see that Cassian's writing to monks, they're already Christians. And so how are we to understand divine grace if he's already writing to Christians? What about grace for non-Christians? So yes, the way I interpret Cassian, I think he is making broader than Christian-only descriptions of how grace works, because he talks about the manifold grace of God, the variegated grace of God. The way that I think Cassian's model of grace works is that it's a both and. And my contention is simply that the postulation of divine grace and human freedom as if they are pitted against each other. This is what you get in Augustine, the later Augustine. This is what you get in traditionally Protestant conversations, that it's either grace or human freedom, and one or the other has to be the first, that is playing the wrong type of game in Cassian's mind. And I would argue for how we should understand biblical text. I think Cassian's model, Chrysostom's model, is correct on this, has something to offer Protestantism, that it's a both and. What is it that's mutually exclusive to divine grace and human freedom? How is it that one must be logically prior or pitted against the other? To me, it's a both and operation. Faustus calls this the prima gratia, the first grace, the ultimate grace. It is both. It's not an either or. So that's the first example where he's using this concurrent model. And so you see here in a couple pages later, let me see where I can find where he cites me. Yes, so this is where he talks about how I didn't nuance it to refer to non-believers. It's in the footnote 110. Okay, so it's at the bottom of the camera there in order to fit. I'll read it out loud. Footnote 110 on page 96. Although Juris does not point out the significance of the fact that nothing in Conference 13 is referring to the beginning of salvation, his discussion of the varied action of grace in Cassian's thought is consistent with the point I am making here. So you see here that Fairbairn has appreciated the point I made there in my chapter on Cassian regarding Cassian's model of grace.